Hello my friends, and thank you for tuning into this video, which is the second in a 5 video series this week of some INFJ how-to stuff. Just a little bit of thoughts and advice and experiences from crap that I've been through and been through a lot of. So if you've missed it, yesterday's video was on self-confidence. It was definitely not on memory. It was on self-confidence as an INFJ. And so I have these in a series, but one does not depend on the other, but I hope you'll check them all out. If this is the first one you're seeing, go and watch the first one in this 5 video series and then come back to this one. And then if the other ones are out, watch those as well. And make sure you comment, like, share, subscribe, all that kind of cool stuff. It really does help me and it helps us to bring more people into this tribe and just humanity as a whole as INFJs are brought together. Just like I said on the prior video, if you haven't, please give me a follow on Instagram. I am posting some stuff up there and trying to get everything ramped up in advance of what's a really cool moment that is very close to happening, which is me writing the words "the end" at the end of a book that I've been writing for the last year. And so I'm definitely going to be sharing more of that journey for my fellow creatives out here. As before, I'm trying to do a minimal amount of editing. So I'm probably just going to leave that in so you can see, because that happens in most of my videos, because it's just what happens. And just to get a little bit more natural feel to this whole thing, I have to edit a little bit because I have to edit a little bit, but here we go, right? So today I want to talk about another INFJ how-to, and that is on setting boundaries. Yeah, and I think, so I posted up on the community page on the channel, which, by the way, if you haven't checked out, you should absolutely check out, just a little bit about what videos people are interested in. And I think boundaries was actually a pretty big response as to something that people are interested in hearing some thoughts about. And I certainly have plenty to share on this one. So as before, I wrote some notes down, so you're going to see me peeking off to the side, just as I kind of go through this. I just actually have no idea where these notes actually are. No, they're right there. Yep, we're good. Okay. So setting boundaries and staying open. And I think that's an important caveat to it, because if you only set boundaries and you're the type to just remain closed off, you're going to have a pretty rough time in your relationships. And so it is important to make sure boundaries are there and make sure also that you stick to them, but you take into consideration other people and their boundaries as well. So I wrote 3 things down, and feel free to add more of these in the comments, just as it's nice to have that stuff shared all over the place. What I put here is what happens. Here's the question. What happens when you can't or don't set boundaries? What actually happens to you and happens to your life and happens to your sanity or your well-being when you are unable to or unwilling to set boundaries with a particular person, be it a relationship or a friendship or a work relation, a workship, I don't know, whatever it is. Any of those things, what'll actually happen to you? The first one I wrote down here was you end up defined as the person others think you are, not as you. And I think that creates a kind of dissonance internally. I think, if you think of yourself as an instrument and it needs to be tuned a specific way, when that instrument ends up trying to be tuned like somebody else wants it to be, and not the way you inherently should be tuned as a human being, that will create some foul notes. And that's the kind of thing that can really sort of destroy your day, destroy your month, destroy your year, destroy part of your life. And it ends up having you living as what somebody else wants you to be instead of what you authentically are. It really does it destroys your authenticity, I think, as a whole. The second thing here is that you end up hurt. When you don't set boundaries, you end up hurt. People with strong personalities will absolutely run roughshod over you and just bend you to what they want and what they want to have and what they want you to be. And again, it makes you less of who you are in total. And it makes you more of what another person or other people want you to be, which is a very difficult position to be in, because you obviously want somebody happy and you want to please them, but at the same time, you're sort of ignoring your own needs and your own identity and who you are. That's a really tough thing to have to figure out, to have to square up. Last one, and I know this will hit for some of you, is you end up seeking the things that you resonate with or the things that you want outside of a friendship or relationship. And it doesn't necessarily mean another person. It's not like everybody falls, everybody that's in a relationship that's not getting fulfilled falls into being an adulterer. It doesn't work that way. But it could be through substances and substance abuse. It could be through just any kind of typical unhealthy behavior. When you are with a person and you have needs and those needs are not being met, naturally you're going to become unhealthy and unbalanced. And that's really tough, because then you start to seek what those things are and seek the validation that you're looking for and seeking it outside of the relationship. And all because you were unable to set a boundary and say, hey, listen, I need this thing. Whatever it is, I need it. And I need you to help provide that to me so we can have a fruitful friendship and relationship. Otherwise, you just start to get empty inside, and that's a really tough position for you to be in, particularly as a sweet, sweet INFJ. So how do we set them? How do we set those boundaries? And how can you be confident in setting those boundaries and stick to them, but make sure that you still are a good person and you're not just demanding of everybody because you want certain things and not taking into consideration what they are and who those people are and what they want at the same time. Here comes the balancing act, right? And this is tough for a lot of people, and I think for INFJs in particular, because we do tend to be needy in certain ways, and we do tend to feel pretty dejected when we're not getting the things that we want. I mean, kind of like anybody would, of course. We just typically have a little bit more of that empathy, so it can really hurt us a bit. So I'm gonna read a couple things that I wrote down over here. The first one, as far as setting boundaries goes, I wrote down, understand that your worth does not depend on the worth of other people. Just let that soak in for a second. Your worth does not depend on the worth of other people. Think of yourself as that individual. We are all worthy of love. We are all worthy of affection. Somebody is not more worthy of that than you are. And you may be with somebody that tries to tell you that they are and that they have needs that are more important than your own, but that's not really the way human interaction works. This is especially difficult when you run into somebody that has very little empathy, because that person is unable to put themselves in your shoes and they can't really understand your needs, and that communication becomes very, very difficult. I think the most important thing, though, is understanding that there is nobody more or less important than you. If you try to think of this in broad humanity terms, if you are with somebody, that person has equal weight in the relationship that you do. And it is important that you are respected, and it is important that they are respected, providing it's offered in two ways, as a two-way street. So the second way to set some boundaries is understanding and separating who you are from what you want. You may be smitten with somebody, and you may want to be with that person. And that person may not respect the fact that you have needs, and your urge as a people pleaser is going to be to do things their way, and to, you know what, if I just put some of my own needs aside, then they're going to be happier and I'll be more of what they want. That's a terrible, toxic way to think. Think of yourself as an instrument again. Think of yourself as a harp, right? And you have another person that wants to tune you differently than the way you prefer to be tuned, where you make your own beautiful music. They want to take some strings and turn G notes into F sharps or what have you. When you're played in that way, it's going to sound terrible because you're not right. You're dissonant. Things aren't making sense. You're out of tune. By the same token, if you are that harp and somebody is saying, I love you for who you are, but I don't like this, this, and this, and I don't want you to do that anymore. Well, it's like taking a harp and removing, strings. And if you do that, what is that actually going to sound like when you try to play your music? You're going to be incomplete. It's not you. And you may ignore it and say, well, I can play some music and sometimes I sound okay. But remember that you're altering your own person because somebody else just happens to not like a couple of the notes. Now, is that really fair to you? No, it's not. It's not. You should be that harp, and you should be perfectly in tune, and you should have all of your strings, and you should not be giving that up because somebody doesn't like the music. If they don't like the music, they don't like you. It's not a very accepting way for a relationship to work. Likewise, you have to understand that that person is also a harp and that you cannot change their tune and you cannot alter their music. You cannot remove their strings. And if you expect to do so, but expect yourself to leave intact, you're on the opposite side of that. You're the one who's manipulating, and you're the one who's trying to get somebody to change to be what you want them to be when they're just not. And you have to accept that sometimes. Sometimes it's important to understand that, I'm in this relationship and boy, I really want to be with this person, but they're not giving me what I need. They're not giving you what you need. So why do you want to be with them? You know what I mean? The last bit on boundaries is not being afraid to say no. And this one's really important because no has that final door closing sort of endpoint to it that we are often very uncomfortable using. And it's because we're afraid, typically, that if we say no and we stand up for ourselves, that we are going to lose the person that we're standing up to. And that's a tough feeling to have, especially when you've put a lot of work and effort into a relationship, be it a friendship or a workship or a relationship, a romantic relationship of some kind. But if you say no, and you say, I have principles, and these are my principles, and these are my boundaries, and I'm not going to do this, or I need this, and I will certainly provide what you need to you, but you're going to have to provide my needs as well. If you say that to somebody, and they take it in such a way of you being needy, or demanding, or being so firm and rigid in what you want, then that's kind of a way to manipulate you. If you put your foot down, you say, I'm sorry, I'm not doing this right now. And somebody else is like, well, you're just being rigid and you're being a this or you're being a that or whatever. It may call you names, who knows. But it is important to be able to say no, just to stand your ground, stand up for your boundaries and say, no, I'm not going to be taken for granted. And I'm going to get the affection that I need. And I'm going to get the time with you that I need. And these are basic things. They're like requirements for a healthy relationship, be it a friendship or otherwise. And it is important to stick to those principles and be able to say no and understand all of these things. You are worth that. You're not worth less. Your no isn't something that doesn't matter because you're not as important as somebody else. Absolutely not. Your no is just as important as anything else. And if somebody doesn't like the fact that you have boundaries and you're sticking to them, it's because they want to run over them. And do you really want that person in your life in that capacity? Maybe in some capacity, sure. but do you really want them to be a close friend if they don't respect your boundaries? Do you want them to be in a romantic relationship with you if they can't handle you saying no to something that you want to say no to? Absolutely not. I don't think that's a healthy two-way street, so to speak. So, my sweet, sweet INFJ friends, thoughts on this one are like this. Not setting the boundaries is going to wreck you. You're going to be that harp that plays terrible music, that is out of tune, and that is missing strings. And that is not you. You are a beautiful soul, you are a gift, and you are capable of so much. So be the harp that plays the beautiful music, and have the people around you that appreciate it. Maybe they don't like the style. They don't like every note. Harp music isn't really for everybody. I mean, I don't listen to it in the car as I'm on my way to the supermarket or anything, but still, be that person that can play your own music and that stands up for it and says, nope, this is the way I am tuned, and this is how I am to be played, and these are my strings, and accept them for what they are. And likewise, be the person that reaches out and says, I will play you the way you want to be played, and I will look after you and care for you just like you're doing to me. And that kind of a relationship is one that can stand for a long time because you're both respecting each other, and that's really what it comes down to. So establish those boundaries and stick to them, right? Be that sweet INFJ, be that gift, but understand that your worth is everything, especially since you're the one that has to have your own back. Go figure. So thank you for watching this one, and I hope you'll tune into tomorrow's, which is going to be using gratitude to stay balanced. Oh, I can't wait. I hope you've enjoyed these so far. Please, again, like, subscribe, and do stuff. And please subscribe and hit the bell. The bell is important because I don't really upload on a normal schedule, and it would be good if you got those notifications so you can come hang out with me. So thank you so much for watching, and I will catch you on the next video.